Welcome to From Kabul to Canada, in conversation with Dr. Mahdavi, the podcast where we join in dialogue with the remarkable Afghan poet, journalist, and doctor of philosophy. He has dedicated his life to challenging corruption and uncovering the truth. I'm your host, Mir Mahdavi, and in today's first episode, we are honored to introduce you to the story and voice of my father, Dr. Mahdavi, whose journey encompasses the realms of identity, expression, and the ever-elusive sense of belonging. In this episode, we'll journey through Dr. Mahdavi's experiences as a young journalist in Afghanistan, exploring his relentless pursuit of democracy and transparency during the early 2000s.
But if you continue your job, we'll stop you. By the point of gun, we will kill you. It was very important for us to stop corruption, to stop the people who had bloody hands. On top of that, he made an agreement with the terrorists to kill me on the street when I was out of jail. Mir Mahdavi, who was seeking for a second chance of life, this guy needed Canadian mercy and help.
This is From Kabul to Canada, in conversation with Dr. Mahdavi. I'm Mir Mahdavi. Welcome to the conversation. For those lucky enough to witness our parents aging, we begin to see them beyond the horizons of our blood relation, and in a way humanize them for the first time. I am nearing my dad's age when he escaped Afghanistan, and the older I grow, my questions for him grow exponentially. From my earliest memories, my dad has been a freedom fighter. As a young Afghan refugee in Iran, he experienced firsthand the depravity and powerlessness of those who bear the brunt of systemic oppression. He fled Afghanistan with his mother and sister when he was 9 years old. My grandfather passed away when my dad was 2 years old on his land in Surkhabad, and my dad has been the head of household since then, first for himself and his mother, working as young as 9 in Iranian factories to ensure their needs were met, and then for his own family, my mother and his kids. He is a relentless go-getter who continues to stun any system that seeks to oppress him. I want to know what freedom means to Dr. Mahdavi and whether his definition has evolved.
Freedom means the power to act, to think, to speak the way someone wants without any interference or restraint from the authorities, from the government. And it exists in any democratic society. So that was the definition that I started, began dealing with freedom and understanding and perceiving freedom. It definitely evolved. Every social and human-related entities could evolve, and freedom for me evolved, and it I actually made a closer relationship with liberty, with the free condition that human lives. And so from a political aspect of freedom, which was I started defining and understanding freedom, to the level of more philosophical definition of freedom, which is liberty. And the change was in a sense that in political approach to defining freedom, you face more obstacles and issues than when you approach only in a political perceiving freedom.
In the fall of 2000, my parents and I got on a midday train towards Pakistan, leaving our family, home, and everything we couldn't fit into our one suitcase behind in Iran. My dad had been charged with false espionage, imprisoned, released, and still threatened, so we had to leave. Dr. Mahdavi completed most of his early education in Iran, first a Bachelor of Physics and then his years at the Qom Religious Institute. He has learned, taught, and worked alongside Iranians, but to quote his master's dissertation, there was no home for his words. In the same dissertation, he argues that the intricate art of poetry translation is not merely challenging, It might even be regarded as a near impossible endeavor. The feasibility of translation hinges on the translator's ability to dissect the intertwined fabric of meaning and form meticulously, and then ingeniously reweave it into a new linguistic home. The crux of Dr. Mahdavi's argument lies in his identification of the symbiotic interdependence of form and meaning within poetry. Any successful poetic translation necessitates translating the content and the form together. As a native speaker of Farsi, Dr. Mahdavi's poetic creations remain confined to their original linguistic realm, untouched by translation and thus inaccessible to his Canadian circle of fellow writers and academics. Drawing from the realm of Jungian psychology, which designates the unconscious as belonging to the domain of the mother, a compelling parallel emerges. Could one surmise that your poetic and artistic creations, stemming from the depths of your unconscious mind, are intrinsically tied to your motherland, Afghanistan?
In a sense, yes, absolutely. It immediately belongs to the people that I am from them, and I am one of them. It belongs to me first, and the people who are more similar to me. So yes, immediately it belongs to the people of Afghanistan. But in a wider range, it belongs to humanity. Belongs to human. Belongs to human desires and fears and human wishes and the things that relate to all human in general.
In 2000, against the backdrop of a tumultuous Afghanistan, Dr. Mahdavi embarked on a mission that would shape the course of journalism in the region. This was when the Taliban's iron grip extended over the vast expanse of Afghanistan, save for a few pockets of resistance held by groups like the Northern Alliance. The scars of conflict and the weight of isolation had left Afghanistan grappling with dire economic straits, limited access to essential services, and an economy that bore the heavy burden of years of conflict-induced stagnation. The fabric of the nation's infrastructure lay in ruins, and the population endured the collective trauma of a ravaging war. Amid this chaotic landscape of atrocities, Dr. Mahdavi discerned that the Afghan people were yearning for a transparent source of information. He understood that informed citizens are the bedrock of a resilient society and envisioned Afghan civilians armed with the power of knowledge, enabling them to navigate the complex labyrinth of their history and present circumstances. He sought to empower them with the insight to make informed decisions and perhaps in time even influence their nation's future trajectory. The Canadian Journalism Foundation wrote a profile on Dr. Mahdavi in 2006. I will read a brief excerpt of Matteo Stein's story. By 8 a.m. most days, Mir Mahdavi is walking his customary 15-minute walk from his home in western Kabul, greeting the same friendly faces and stopping in the same grocery store for cigarettes before arriving at the 3-story apartment building that houses Aftab, The Sun, the weekly newspaper of which he is the founder and editor-in-chief. There, he makes his way down the first-floor hall past the offices of his 10 employees before settling at his desk, which overlooks a busy street. On Monday mornings, when Aftab goes on sale, the local kiosks along the road outside are especially crowded. One week, a typical headline might read, "The Death of Democracy." On another, "Religion plus government equals despotism." Matteo Stein's illuminating profile of Dr. Mahdavi is a testament to the audacious confrontation he undertook against the Taliban's suffocating grip on Islamic fundamentalism. This opposition was not confined merely to the pages of his weekly articles. It also reverberated through the chambers of community engagement. With unwavering resolve, he would open the doors of Aftab's sanctum once a week to a gathering of eager university students, often numbering between 75 to 80. These students would gather sitting on the floor as he lectured on the intertwined themes of Islam, poetry, and the profound nuances of journalism. This act of communal enlightenment was, in its essence, a subtle defiance against the imposed darkness of ignorance and suppression. Clearly, Dr. Mahdavi's profound affection for the Afghan people is palpable, as evidenced by his unwavering dedication to their well-being and protection. With this in mind, I'm curious to understand your own perspective on nationalism. Can you share whether you consider yourself a nationalist when it comes to Afghanistan?
It's a very difficult question, especially when you speak in Afghanistan and about Afghanistan of nationhood, because we are divided. A division made hundreds years ago. We're divided into ethnicities and into the different tribes and communities, and the division is very hard, very strong. In bringing these divisions together, unite them, and making them in a nation, it's a very challenging problem. We are faced with uh, challenges from very different areas of politics and societies and religions, and all those areas are since stopping you of having all these different tribes and communities bound together as one nation. I would say shortly that in Afghanistan we are not yet a nation, unfortunately, based on the definition that we have of a nationhood. We are trying to be a nation, but when it comes to politics, when it comes to daily life and actual life, we're more a combination and togetherness of different tribes and ethnic groups than a nation.
The article responsible for his imprisonment was published as Sacred Fascism. It challenged the intersection of Islam and governance and held a critical mirror to the past actions of once powerful Mujahideen figures. The aftermath of this audacious publication was swift and ominous. The then president of Afghanistan issued the arrest and subsequent execution of Dr. Mahdavi on the grounds of blasphemy. News of Dr. Mahdavi's arrest galvanized an international uproar. Human Rights Watch chastised the leadership under President Karzai. Their Afghanistan researcher, John Sifton, declared, "The government's message to journalists is clear. You are not protected." This somber truth underscored a grave reality. Within the Afghan landscape, the weight of authority, whether vested in high-ranking officials or influential clerics, wielded the power to dictate the fate of journalists with impunity. Aftab's offices were subjected to scrutiny by the police, leading to their forced closure. The relentless grasp of Amniyat-e Milli, Afghanistan's intelligence agency, reached even further, with their agents confiscating copies of the newspaper from local stores and libraries. Dr. Mahdavi's narrative embodies resilience against an oppressive backdrop and this intricate dance between courage and repression. His unyielding stance represents a quest for truth and a spirited fight for the very soul of journalism. But amidst all of this, it's essential to remember he was still very much a young man. I want to know if there were any mentors and elders to guide and protect you during your time in Afghanistan.
Yes and no. Yes, there were a lot of examples around me, especially in surrounding areas like Iran, like Tajikistan, maybe some other closer areas. In the Western world, a lot of examples that people fought for freedom and equality. But I didn't have a direct mentor or someone who teaches me how to perceive and how to act in terms of freedom and freedom of speech. But I studied, I tried to make a clear path of where I am going and where I am taking the newspaper and the intellectual community called Aftab with me. But perhaps doing all by my own, not having a direct leader or a direct mentor. I don't believe in leadership in politics, but I do believe in mentor. But unfortunately, I didn't have a direct mentor for myself.
In closing, I extend a warm welcome to all of our new listeners. As we conclude this episode, we invite you to join us for an insightful exploration in our upcoming second episode. In the next chapter of From Kabul to Canada, in conversation with Dr. Mahdavi, we delve into Dr. Mahdavi's political experiences as an Afghan in Iran, unravel the intricate tapestry of his journey, marked by both personal and geopolitical struggles. Stay tuned to gain a deeper understanding of the challenges he faced and the resilience he demonstrated in the face of adversity. Thank you for being a part of this captivating dialogue. This is Khatara Mahdavi.